Commander Vorlag of the Vorgan Imperium prided himself on his unwavering resolve. His species, a race of stoic, reptilian warriors, had conquered half a dozen star systems, their might undeniable, their discipline absolute. They understood conflict, clear lines, overwhelming force, swift subjugation. Humanity, a relatively young species, had recently joined the Galactic Concordat, a loose alliance of civilizations. The Vorgans considered them quaint, unpredictable, but ultimately, militarily insignificant. Their technology was competent, their resolve admirable, but they lacked the raw, millennia-honed martial spirit of the Imperium. This diplomatic tour of the Terran military academies was, to Vorlag, a tedious formality. A Concordat directive, designed to foster interspecies understanding. Vorlag saw it as an opportunity to confirm his prejudices, to observe the human training methods, chuckle at their perceived naivety, and reaffirm the Vorgan's superior martial philosophy. He was accompanied by a small retinue of Vorgan strategists, their multifaceted eyes eager to dissect human weakness. Their first stop was the United Earth Space Force Academy, a sprawling complex nestled on the Moon, bathed in the gentle glow of Earth. Vorlag expected shining armor, parade grounds, and rigid drills. Instead, he found a university. Students, clad in simple jumpsuits, moved between lecture halls and simulation pods. There were no bellowing drill sergeants, no harsh punishments, just focused intensity. Their human escort, an unassuming Captain Anya Sharma, smiled amiably. "Welcome, Commander. Here, we believe true strength begins in the mind. Our cadets spend their first year almost entirely in theoretical combat, advanced astrophysics, and psychology." Vorlag scoffed internally. Psychology? What use was studying the frailties of the mind when you possessed overwhelming firepower? He watched a group of cadets huddled around a holographic display, debating intricate tactical scenarios. They weren't just moving ships, they were discussing supply chain vulnerabilities, psychological profiles of enemy commanders, and predicting political fallout from a single skirmish. It was needlessly complex. Later, they observed a physical conditioning session. Vorlag expected brutal obstacle courses, or perhaps gladiatorial combat. Instead, they watched humans performing what appeared to be elaborate, almost dance-like routines, emphasizing flexibility, balance, and what Sharma called mindfulness. One human cadet, barely more than a youth, was meditating, his face placid even as a simulated battlefield raged around him in his visor. "This is how you train warriors." Vorlag finally rumbled, unable to contain his disdain. "Where is the discipline? The pain? The forging of unbreakable will through hardship?" Captain Sharma's smile remained. "We believe true discipline comes from within, Commander. And pain, well, our species has had enough of that. We prefer to learn from it, not inflict it unnecessarily." Vorlag dismissed her words as human sentimentality. He still saw soft, emotional beings. But then, they entered the history and ethics wing. He expected propaganda, tales of glorious conquest. Instead, he saw detailed, graphic holos of humanity's own past wars. Not just victories, but devastating defeats, civilian casualties, the raw, brutal cost of conflict. Cadets debated moral dilemmas of warfare, the ethics of new weapons, the psychological toll on soldiers. There was a sobering honesty to it, a self-awareness that was utterly alien to Vorgan doctrine. "We review our own mistakes," Sharma explained, gesturing to a particularly grim display depicting a nuclear wasteland, "to ensure we never repeat them. and to understand the full weight of the decision to engage in conflict. Vorlag felt a flicker of something he hadn't anticipated, not respect, but a nascent confusion. This wasn't weakness, it was an introspection he couldn't comprehend. He still saw a species unfit for true war, but he was beginning to realize that the humans weren't merely naive. They were terrifyingly unpredictable. And he had only seen the surface. Commander Vorlag's unease deepened as Captain Sharma led them to the Academy's tactical simulation hub. He expected grand strategic displays, perhaps simulated fleet engagements against known alien adversaries. Instead, they entered a sprawling, dimly lit chamber filled with individual pods, each humming with barely contained energy. Cadets, strapped into ergonomic chairs, wore full-immersion neural interfaces, their faces serene, almost vacant. "Here," Captain Sharma explained, her voice gaining a subtle edge, "our cadets face the impossible. Not just enemies, but the limits of their own minds. We call them cognitive forges." Vorlag observed a simulation display from outside a pod. The scenario unfolding was not a clean military engagement. It was a chaotic, multivector crisis, a civilian transport under attack by a new, unknown alien entity, simultaneous political assassinations on a distant colony, a critical supply line disruption, and a sudden, inexplicable geological catastrophe on a populated moon. The cadet inside was frantically issuing orders, coordinating rescue efforts, analyzing threat vectors, and making agonizing ethical choices, all at once. The simulation was designed to overwhelm, to induce panic, to force an absolute breakdown. "This is inefficient," Vorlag rumbled, his armored plates rustling. "Such chaos breeds indiscipline. A warrior must focus, eliminate the primary threat." Captain Sharma merely smiled. "And what if there is no primary threat, Commander? What if the battlefield is everywhere, and the enemy is simply entropy? We don't train them to win every fight. We train them to endure every defeat, to learn from every failure, and to find a way forward when all hope is lost. We train them to make peace with the impossible." Then, the simulations shifted. They moved beyond mere tactical challenges. In one pod, a cadet was trying to negotiate peace with a species that communicated only through complex mathematical equations, their failure meaning the destruction of an entire star system. In another, a cadet was forced to choose which of two equally innocent civilian populations to sacrifice to save the other, with every choice leading to overwhelming guilt. Vorlag saw cadets weep, scream, and even collapse in their pods, yet after a brief neural reset, they would resume, their determination chilling. "We expose them to the absolute worst," Sharma continued, her voice quiet. "The scenarios are personalized, designed to exploit their deepest fears, their moral quandaries, their psychological breaking points. We call it defensive desensitization. They learn to function even when their minds are screaming, even when their souls are tearing themselves apart. Because in real conflict, the enemy doesn't care about your comfort or your sanity." Vorlag felt a cold dread begin to creep into his hardened warrior's heart. The Vorgan Imperium trained its soldiers to be unwavering, to suppress emotion. But these humans, they were being deliberately broken, then reassembled, piece by piece, into something far more terrifying. They weren't ignoring their weaknesses, they were weaponizing them. They were embracing their own frailties and turning them into an unnatural resilience. Then, Captain Sharma led them to a specific pod. The display showed a scenario unlike the others. A lone human soldier, trapped on a desolate, alien moon, was surrounded by overwhelming Vorgan forces. The soldier's odds were 0. Yet, Instead of fighting or surrendering, the human was meticulously disassembling their own weaponry, salvaging components, and beginning to construct something. Something small, complex, and utterly baffling. This is the final test for our strategists, Sharma explained, her gaze fixed on the screen. We call it the zero-sum scenario. No hope of rescue. No chance of victory. Just the absolute, inevitable end. The cadet must find a way to make their death meaningful. To ensure that even in utter defeat, they inflict maximum, lasting damage to the enemy's morale, logistics, or even their understanding of reality, long after their last breath. On the screen, the human soldier completed their device. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a beacon. A small, intricately crafted device that, upon activation, began to broadcast a single, looping signal, a complex, resonant frequency designed to subtly, imperceptibly, interfere with the specific neural patterns of Vorgan strategists, inducing minor cognitive dissonance and an inexplicable aversion to certain tactical maneuvers. A posthumous ghost, subtly undermining the enemy's future campaigns, ensuring that even in victory, the Vorgan would never truly be free of their human adversary. Vorlag stared, horrified. They weren't training for victory, they were training for post-mortem sabotage. They were training their dying to haunt their conquerors. This wasn't war, this was a chilling, insidious form of cosmic pest control. He had come seeking weakness, and instead, he had found a darkness far more profound than any he had ever encountered in the void. A darkness forged from introspection, from suffering, and from a chilling, unwavering will to prevail even beyond death. Commander Vorlag's hardened carapace felt an unfamiliar chill despite the Academy's regulated temperature. The cognitive forges and their zero-sum scenarios had peeled back layers of his understanding of warfare. He had always seen humans as emotional, chaotic. Now, he saw a species that systematically processed chaos, weaponized despair, and planned for victory even in their own annihilation. This wasn't weakness, it was a profound, almost terrifying adaptability. This is not logical, Vorlag finally managed, his voice raspy. Such training, it cultivates madness. A soldier must be disciplined, predictable. Captain Sharma merely nodded, her expression unreadable. Perhaps, to a species that only understands blunt force. We, Commander, have learned that the true battle often isn't fought with energy weapons, but with ideas. And the most dangerous idea is one that you cannot comprehend, let alone counter. Their next stop was the Academy's Cybernetics and AI Integration Lab. Vorlag expected advanced robotics, perhaps drone warfare. Instead, he found rows of unassuming terminals, behind which young cadets worked with a quiet, intense focus. They weren't programming combat algorithms, they were analyzing vast datasets of galactic social media, interspecies economic trends, and even cultural memes. Here, Sharma explained, gesturing to a complex holographic network of interconnected data points, our cadets learn asymmetric influence warfare. We teach them to identify and exploit vulnerabilities not in starship hulls, but in information networks, supply chains, and even collective psyches. Vorlag scoffed. You mean espionage? Sabotage? These are covert tactics, not grand strategy. They are, Commander, Sharma corrected, a faint, almost imperceptible amusement in her eyes, when practiced by species that understand only blunt force. When integrated into a comprehensive doctrine, they become the fabric of conflict itself. Why destroy a fleet when you can convince its supply lines to simply divert? Why invade a world when you can foster internal dissent that leads to its peaceful secession? She paused at a terminal where a cadet was meticulously mapping the trade routes of the Vorgan Imperium, cross-referencing them with known diplomatic tensions between Vorgan client states. The cadet's screen then displayed complex algorithms predicting optimal points for targeted information dissemination, designed to subtly amplify existing grievances and undermine loyalty without direct communication. "We do not just train soldiers, Commander," Sharma continued. "We train information architects, psychological engineers, and cultural anthropologists of conflict. We teach them to understand an enemy better than that enemy understands itself. To find the unseen pressure points, the unspoken fears, the hidden desires." Vorlag felt a cold dread spread through his internal organs. The Vorgan Imperium was a monolithic structure, its strength in its rigid adherence to order. But their order relied on predictable factors, on quantifiable threats. The idea of an enemy that could simply understand them into submission, that could erode their foundations from within using their own cultural data, was utterly horrifying. It was warfare without a battlefield, a silent, unseen opponent. Then, they observed a live simulation of asymmetric influence. A cadet was tasked with neutralizing a simulated pirate cartel operating in a remote, independent system. Instead of deploying a fleet, the cadet initiated a series of subtle, precisely timed data releases. False rumors about rival cartel leaders, fabricated financial incentives for defection, even expertly crafted memes designed to sow discord and suspicion within the pirate ranks. The results were chillingly effective. Within hours, the cartel disintegrated, its members turning on each other, its leaders captured by disillusioned lieutenants. No shots fired. No lives lost. Just information, meticulously weaponized. Vorlag, a warrior who had crushed rebellions with overwhelming force, suddenly understood the true threat posed by humanity. It wasn't their ships, which he still considered inferior to his own. It was their minds. Their terrifying capacity for empathy, analysis, and manipulation. They were not just fighting wars, they were creating entirely new forms of conflict, where the true battleground was the opponent's perception, their trust, and their internal cohesion. He had come to assess military strength, but he had found something far more insidious, a species that could wage war without ever needing to declare it, subtly unmaking their enemies from the inside out. He had looked for warriors, and found ghosts in the machine, whispering discord into the very soul of the galaxy. Commander Vorlag's mind reeled. He had witnessed training methods that defied every tenet of Vorgan military doctrine. No grand parades, no crushing physical trials, no focus on raw firepower. Instead, humans cultivated psychological resilience, mastered unseen influences, and prepared for death as just another strategic maneuver. He felt a chilling fear, not of their strength, but of their unpredictability. "This is an insidious philosophy," Vorlag stated, his voice barely a whisper. "You do not train warriors. You train shadows." Captain Sharma merely offered a faint smile. "We train for survival, Commander. And in the vastness of the galaxy, the greatest battles are often fought in the unseen. Against foes who don't even know they're at war until their empire crumbles from within." Their final stop was not a training facility, but a simple, almost sparse, research lab. Here, cadets were not operating simulators or analyzing data. They were engaged in what appeared to be highly advanced, theoretical physics experiments, manipulating quantum fields, and observing the properties of exotic matter. The air hummed with barely contained energy, and complex holographic models of space-time distortions flickered above their consoles. "This is where our future is forged," Sharma explained, her voice devoid of a salesman's pitch, carrying only the weight of profound confidence. "We believe true deterrence doesn't come from bigger weapons, but from understanding the fundamental fabric of the universe better than anyone else. Why merely destroy a ship when you can make its very existence impossible?" Vorlag's internal sensors, usually so reliable, began to register faint, impossible readings. Micro-singularities. Localized temporal shifts. Gravitational anomalies so small they shouldn't even exist. These were the theoretical boogeymen of high-level physics, concepts that even the Vorgan Imperium deemed too dangerous or too impossible to pursue practically. Yet, here, human cadets, barely out of their larval stages, were casually manipulating them. "Our primary focus," Sharma continued, gesturing to a swirling holographic projection of a distant star system, "is on non-kinetic, non-destructive strategic neutralization. We don't aim to obliterate planets, Commander. We aim to make them inaccessible. To make hostile fleets irrelevant. To ensure that any conflict with humanity costs the aggressor not just resources, but their very understanding of reality." Vorlag stared at the projection, seeing the subtle distortions the human cadets were imposing. A star system, once a vital strategic point, was being slowly, imperceptibly, shifted out of conventional hyperspace lanes. Its planets were being wrapped in localized temporal loops, making any invasion force arrive decades or centuries too late. Its sun's energy output was being subtly siphoned, rendering it less useful for colonization. All without a single visible weapon discharge. "We are, by galactic standards, a peaceful species, Commander," Sharma concluded, turning to face him fully. Her gaze was direct, unwavering. "But we have spent 1,000 years contemplating every conceivable form of threat, and every possible response. We don't wish for conflict. But if conflict finds us, we ensure that the aggressor's very understanding of the cosmos is the first casualty." Commander Vorlag returned to his ship, the Grand Iron Vengeance, a warship designed to instill fear across the galaxy. But as he stood on his bridge, looking out at the silent stars, he no longer saw them as points of conquest. He saw them as a canvas for human ingenuity, for a type of warfare that transcended all he knew. He had come to observe a military academy, expecting to confirm human weakness. Instead, he had witnessed the horrifying depth of human thought, their capacity for chilling adaptation, and their silent, pervasive ability to wage war on a plane he couldn't even comprehend. He had come to leave feeling superior, he left feeling profoundly, utterly horrified. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. Vorlag now knew better. And the knowledge terrified him to his very core. If Commander Vorlag's terror is contagious, smash that like button now. Subscribe to the channel for more mind-bending HFY stories that explore humanity's true power, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the chilling conclusion to this galactic revelation.